The Irvine Chinese High School Chinese course are currently accepted only as elected by IUSD. Would you support these courses to be accepted as foreign language course at IUSD high schools? How would you help? We're going to answer the question from a second. Number two, start first.
That would be me. I do believe it should be at all of our high schools. I think, in fact, I was instrumental in even getting it at one of our middle schools. I really fundamentally believe in language as a critical component to an overall educational experience. And I think Chinese is one of the key languages that we need to be offering throughout the district. However, I don't want to sap some of the support that SCCCA is getting for the Chinese language. I know that we might end up being competitors where we're teaching Chinese and you're teaching Chinese, so I think we should work together on developing a thoughtful language throughout the district.
Next one, please.
Multi-language speakers is very important to me. We lived in Hong Kong for a few years, and when my kids came back when they were 5 and 4, we actually looked into putting them into your university high program. We were living at Turok at the time, and unfortunately, they had Mandarin tutors while they were in Hong Kong, and we couldn't continue here because at that time you did not have these Chinese language learners. Now you do, and I think it's fabulous. I really believe that every child should have the ability to have multi-language. I would support anything we can do to bring that to it. I know currently we have one high school that has Chinese, and I would support every effort to getting Irvine Unified involved with
Yes. Number 4.
Thank you. Would you read the question again? I think I misunderstood.
The Irvine Chinese schools Chinese course are currently accepted only as elected by IUSD. Would you support these courses to be accepted as foreign language course?
So it sounds to me like what that is saying is, would IUSD accept a course that is taught here? I believe that's what I'm hearing. I believe that the idea is a good idea. I would not want to say yes to anything without exploring it a little bit further and reading about it and seeing what the course does and all that sort of thing, and making sure that the criteria, that what's done is equitable. But I'm sure after that exploration I would find that it is, and then I think that that's a great possibility. I've traveled all over the world and been embarrassed by my lack of ability to say more than the most fundamental little phrases. I think our children and our grandchildren will be traveling more, and people have come here, and we absolutely need language. Thank you.
Number 5.
I think we should look where we can support Chinese language in our high schools and even in our middle schools, and where we can fiscally support them and support them in terms of the appropriate resources. I think we should have those classes taught. Obviously, it's a major world language, and it should be taught there. If we do have it in the schools, we should make it an accepted foreign language course that fulfills that requirement, and not simply as an elective. With respect to classes taught outside of IUSD, I think we do need to. I think that's certainly a very good possibility. But obviously, IUSD has a very strong curriculum, and we need to make sure that we work with the provider of those languages to ensure that the standards are the same and the curriculum makes sense. But it is certainly a possibility that makes sense. We just need to make sure it works for IUSD and for our kids.
I would definitely favor looking into making those courses accepted as foreign language, working collaboratively with the board and the community and the SCCA to make sure that the courses follow the criteria of foreign language courses to be accepted as part of the curriculum for IUSD.
I agree with Carolyn on the proposal that maybe we can need to take a look on a little bit, in-depth study. But I totally support diversity. I support the multi-language in the school. If you're aware that the Chinese is about a quarter of the population of the world, and the Chinese economy is the second largest in the world. So I myself, I like to learn the Chinese also, because with the 25% of the population of the world, I think we're better off with that. So, but again, I get back to Carolyn. I'd like to take a look on the closer on the proposal there and study on the pro and con before we make that kind of decision. Thank you.
There are over 123 languages spoken in IUSD. That's pretty impressive when you think about it. I only know about 3.5 of them. And Chinese is certainly one of the ones I'd like to add to the list. But the question asks a very important question in the world of education, and that is, how can we take courses taught outside of IUSD, outside of our brick and mortar buildings, and make them count toward what they are learning in our buildings? And this is an important question, and it was first broached by athletes who were taking ice skating lessons because they get PE credit. And the same is going to start to apply particularly in this global world where kids are coming into schools with a lot of basic understanding. So the short answer to it is we want to make sure that they meet the academic criteria that IUSD has established, and then we can determine whether or not it would be accepted.
Thank you. I have a very similar position to most of the people that have spoken. I'm fully in support of looking into making sure that it's you get language credit in addition to just being elective. But as everybody's pointed out, it is a matter of making sure that the standards are the same for what ISD expects of other language classes in this. And I know that here we have a very rigorous curriculum, and so it should. I imagine that it's not going to have difficulty reaching those standards, but it is something that obviously we'd have to look at, make sure that everything meets that, and it should be something that we work towards.
All right, next question starts with the number 3.
Can I ask a quick question? Are we going to have a closing statement? No?
No.
So this will probably be it, right?
Yeah. So you answered 2, right? I think we have time for a couple more.
Yes.
You want a closing statement?
I'm a teacher. Yes. Closure is a very important part of every lesson plan.
Irvine students receive less money per capita based on an outdated formula the state uses. You can see.
Oh, yeah, I got it.
Any thoughts and actions? How do you deal with this one? Start with the number 3, please.
Thoughts and actions. I've been acting on this for 10 years with equalization and up in Sacramento. I have traveled every year to go up to Sacramento to talk about equalization in Irvine with school finance and budgets. I've talked to the governor's office, and slowly we have been making strides to that area. We are not as low as we used to be. We are slowly getting up there, but with new cuts in Sacramento, we need to keep going. We need to keep going up and keep fighting the fight to get us equalization. And I've been committed to that. As I said before, I've worked with budget finance up in Sacramento. I've worked with the ACLU lawsuit up in Sacramento. I've worked with many different areas, and if we keep going that direction and pushing our legislators, we will have that equalization.
One of the things I learned when I spent 2 years in Sacramento was that the way that legislation is done, the kind of sausage approach, it's very difficult to talk about it, because even when we do initiatives, we add to the confusion of it all. What I'd love to see is that the whole thing was we just throw it out and start over. Because it's just such a difficult thing. But we definitely should have the equalization that we're talking about. Thank you.
I think there are 2 prongs to this. One is to continue the efforts that Lauren and people like my wife, Wendy Bokota, have done with the students here going up to Sacramento to advocate for legalization and for fairness up there. We need to push our local assemblymen and state senators to push for that as well. So there's a solution that involves moving Sacramento in that direction to do everything they can to bring about equalization. The second prong, which will not bring as much money but is also very important, is to do what we can at a local level to increase our revenue, whether it's through some of the revenue enhancement ideas that the committee came up with, possibly through a parcel tax or through other ways of local funding, which will not make up for all of that money, but will lessen some of the burden and some of the costs to us because we do not get equalization money. So I think we need to actively pursue both of those prongs and hopefully get a positive result.
Hi, I do think that it is definitely important to advocate for our students on all levels. And as a member of the school board, if elected, I will make it a priority to advocate always for our students, especially for equalization.
I'm not quite sure the question is correct because the each of every student we receive the ADA, the funding based on the head count there, they call the ADA. So the equalization there, I'm not quite sure it's the correct statement or not. In terms of the budget, in terms of the utilizing the available resource there, again, we need to, as a lot of board candidates mentioned on this, the collaboration with the local communities, with the cities, in order to utilizing the innovations within the communities, the business, to support our communities there. Thank you.
I'll clarify possibly what was just said. Districts in California are funded based on whether they are urban or rural. Irvine used to grow strawberries and asparagus, believe it or not. In fact, there were orange fields right here where we stood not too long ago. Now we just grow smart kids, which is wonderful, and I want to continue that tradition as a school board member. So, unfortunately, the state still thinks we grow asparagus and strawberries and nothing else. It'll take time and the efforts that have already been mentioned, but it also takes some creative ideas, some new thoughts, some fresh lights, some fresh ideas. And I hope as a candidate for Irvine School Board, you'll consider me and realize that I can bring those things to the school board. Thank you.
In terms of the type of reform they're talking about out of Sacramento, I mean, even the most recent budget that Governor Brown had proposed was talking about weighted student formulas. And things like that, unfortunately, are not going to long-term benefit districts like Irvine. I mean, the reality of it is, in terms of the lawsuits from way back in the day, even Prop 13, it was designed to flatten out finances so that everybody across the board had about the same amount of money, and not just simply wealthy districts that relied solely on property taxes. And that's why the numbers game has been going on for the years. In reality, it's never going to, in the long term, going to benefit Irvine. So we need to actually look more towards our community and make sure that we have the financial support to make sure that happens for us, whether it's through Measure BB or through a parcel tax or through just collaboration between our public and private partners. And that's the way we're going to need to go to make sure that we have long-term financing.
The equalization effort, we've cut approximately $40 million in the last 8 years. If we had succeeded on the equalization lobby, we might have only had to cut $35 million. We are benefiting potentially from being a basic aid district, but then the fair share change to that made that go back up to $40 million. So we pretty much ended up where we started. So I really come back to the issue of we're not going to get any help from Sacramento going down that road. Unless we solve our problems locally, we're going to continue to be in this situation.
Right, this is the last question. We're going to start number 4. What is your biggest accomplishment in the Irvine public school, and in which school?